Mackenzie,
What up, Lamar?
our girl Riley, she's growing up so
She
fast.
is. She
She
is too
really is.
fast.
She's growing into this young woman, and obviously a lot of changes going on inside of her. And I wanted to ask you, do you have a moment specifically that stands out to you, sort of a defining moment from puberty, preteen, teenage, those formative years?
I don't know if it's like one moment. I do think that there were these very like multiple really formative experiences in middle school. So not quite like Riley, where I think she's going into high school, but like
Mm-hmm.
more in middle school where you are kind of entering puberty, which is something they allude to here in the movie. But I was in a school with a lot of mean girls. And I think that middle school is rampant with
Uh,
that, you know what I mean, in
I think
general.
every school's got their mean girl. As a middle school teacher, I'm pretty sure every school's got their mean girls and their mean boys, but mean girls
Right.
more
Like
often
I
than not.
just think middle school is the time where like girls are the worst. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because and we'll get into this later. It's because we're all going through the same shit that Riley goes through in this movie and everybody's, trying to adjust to their new reality. But I think what was really hard for me was being Hispanic in that school and
Hmm.
being made fun of for things that I literally couldn't control, like the hair on my arms being dark
Uh,
and being called disparaging names for Hispanic girls and having pranks played on me by people who just thought it would be funny, like inviting me to something that I wasn't invited to. And, what it taught me though, I mean this sincerely, is obviously it was hurtful at the time. It was really sad and painful. But I was kind of a social butterfly. I had a lot of friends in a lot of different groups. And what I realized was that these groups of mean girls that I was also trying to be friends with were just not worth my time, and I
yeah.
came to realize that really quickly. And I'm glad that I did instead of continually trying to be friends with them. It was like a marked shift for me in the mental state of everybody just is nice and wants to be friends. Like I really came there with that mentality of
Mm-hmm.
let's all just be friends with each other. I was very idealistic. And then I kind of learned over that period, like, not everybody's going to be friends. Not everybody's going to get along. And these people are just kind of shitty and not worth your time. And so I think I spent
That's
sixth grade being kind of miserable. And then after that, I was like super content. I
that's
didn't give
you
a
you
shit.
realized all that at a very young age because I feel like it's almost instinctive. I think humans, it's kind of like there's this anytime you go to change lanes on the highway and the person that's in that speeds up, it's just this human. I don't know why we do the stupid things that we do, but we're like,
Yeah.
no, you're not getting in front of, even though it has
Ah,
barely any bearing. I mean, there's a difference. I'm not saying when you cut somebody off, but I'm saying you throw on your signal and the person 100 feet behind you is like,
just
nope.
gets possessive of the lane all of
Yeah.
a sudden. Yeah.
It's that sort of instinct that I see in people, not just middle schoolers, but people in general. Like
Yeah.
we're very exclusionary. We like to feel as
Mm-hmm.
though we're part of the in crowd, and you
Because it makes
can,
you feel better. You're
yeah.
better,
It's like, oh, we're gonna make fun. You can people watch this at bars or wherever
Right.
you're out and about. Of whoever the largest group is in the bar thinks that they're the coolest ones there, and they're like
Yeah.
talking shit. I'm not saying it happens 100% of the time, but it's just this really weird thing that
It's a
humans
very
do.
human experience. And I don't think I would have been able to, like you said, I realized it quickly. I think the only reason I realized that quickly is because I had other people. You know what I mean? I had
Hmm.
other friends that I could relate to and connect with and who welcomed me with open arms and vice versa and treated me the way friends are supposed to treat you. And as long as you have that outlet, I think it's that direct comparison that helps you
Hmm.
come out of it. Right. But there are so many people that don't get to have that experience and it takes longer to get there all on your own. I was
Yeah.
lucky to have friends who helped me get through it. So,
Yeah.
um
I think
yeah.
that, like, as somebody who's 5'4", like, I think I learned from an early age in middle school, high school, you can be the person that's getting bullied or you can join the people. And it sucks that that's the way that life is. But this is
Mhm.
coming from somebody who's been a dick at different times in their life.
Yeah.
I've been that person who's like, well, I
Yeah.
better kind of be funny and be able to mock other people or else people will make fun of me. It's this insecurity that was
Yeah.
instilled from that super young age.
It's a lot of growth to get through that and Riley learns the same here as well.
Yeah.
So what about you? Like what's a big, formative moment in your high school or puberty kind of experience?
I mean, you just gave sort of a super emotional. I appreciate you sharing all of that. So I guess I would say that mine is probably the first time I touched boobs. I think that's top of the list, day number one. Core memory for sure. It's ingrained in there. I like to reflect on it
Core
every so often.
That's your emotional moment of your childhood.
Yes.
I like it. Yep. I get it. I can see it.
Let's start the show.
Welcome back to We Drink and We Watch Things. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Lemar.
And we are continuing our month of summer blockbusters with what maybe feels a little out of left field. It did for me at least, but is a hit. Inside Out 2.
It felt like sort of the oddball out from our choices, but it ended up being literally the biggest,
best performing, yeah,
animated film of all time. So I don't think you get much more blockbuster than that.
No, definitely not. And I think I looked it up last night too when I was just googling some stuff, and they're still showing. So like it's got success to go. But we'll get into all that. So, but before we do, what are we drinking?
We are drinking a concoction, as always, provided by Craft World. So make sure to give them a follow. This one here is 2 ounces of bourbon, 1 ounce of sweet and sour, 1 ounce of Grand Marnier, 1/2 ounce of simple syrup or agave, whatever you got on hand, and a little bit of cherry juice. And we're calling this, wait for it, Anxiety, T-E-A. Get it? Like the character in the movie.
I did that, guys. I'm really proud of it. Okay, but no spoilers, but there's a reference in the movie for this that makes sense. So you will get it later. Also, bartender's note, agave is a little better here, and the sweet and sour should be fresh.
I made that mistake because I did not use fresh sweet and sour. I should have just made it myself. And I see what Craft World was going for here. It does taste kind of like a sweet tea, but I made this shit way too sweet.
Yeah.
So I'm still going to drink it because it was my own screw up. But make sure you stick to the recipe out there, guys.
It is a play on a Long Island iced tea, but it is a little bit changed. So anyway.
That's what okay. This plus Coca-Cola is a Long Island iced tea. I was trying to place the taste, and that is accurate.
Yeah, but those of us who don't drink soda had to riff on that a little. So here we are. Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
Alrighty, well, here we go. Inside Out 2, which, as we know, is a 2024 film. These are this summer's blockbusters. We've got some solid ratings out of this one. Like we said, this has been very successful as a film, and I would say notably as a sequel, right? Like, of the ones that do well, the Disneys and the Pixars, they probably have stronger sequel showings, but this is kind of bananas to me. I feel like 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb, almost an 8 out of 10. 91% critics on Rotten Tomatoes and 95% audience.
I'd also be curious to go back and look at how it stacks up next to the first one. Considering that it's 9 years between the releases, the story I think is only a 2-year gap of Riley from the first one to when she's going to high school in this. So that's kind of a difficult jump to make, especially with like an animated feature where some of the voice cast, we'll get into that, doesn't come back. But I feel like maybe they proved everything wrong with just breaking the mold of, you can release an animated sequel 9 years after the original and still make it original and fun and make a shit ton of money.
Yeah, so the original was an 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb.
Slightly higher.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I want to note here for you guys giving things a goog, there is a radically different Inside Out film. Just not PG.
Is it a porn?
Not a Yep. Not a
okay. So don't Google Inside Out.
So don't Google Inside Out, and really, frankly, don't IMDb Inside Out because it always brings up the other one first. And I had this shocking experience multiple times.
Was it okay? So we know it's a porn. Is it a porn parody of Inside Out where they just didn't change the name at all? They were like, that works. We're just gonna make a porn called that.
No, okay. It's like a 90s porn, and it's actually a bunch of like vignettes. So it's like all these like short porn stories. It's so I mean, of course,
great. I'm gonna watch it this weekend.
I mean, they can't serve it up to me and expect me not to look into it. So I definitely looked into it. Anyway.
You watched it all for research purposes?
It was pure research. Yeah. So anyway, Inside Out obviously did really well, and it held up over the first one, is I think the thing
Yeah.
that points out. That's a pretty solid sequel rating, I think.
Yeah, I will say before we even get into our scores, I liked the moral of the story in this, and I thought it was a little more creative than the first. I still think I prefer the first one. Like the first one's a better film, but I thought this did it a lot of justice.
I think it, much like the first one, it just makes sense. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It, like, the way they have built this universe makes so much sense, and they continue to build it out in a way that is so relatable, and again
Yep.
continues to make so much sense, and it's like such a reasonable explanation. You're like, I could check, this all checks out.
That
Like,
was
this
the
is what's
exact
going on in my
word.
brain.
And
Totally
yep,
fine.
relatable was the exact word I had in my head.
But yeah, I agree. I think this one is maybe not quite as strong as the first one, but it's still very strong. So anyway, we'll get into all that in just a minute. We're gonna knock out some basics pretty quick. The director, Kelsey Mann, is a first-time director for this one. Longtime Pixar contributor. She's been a writer for a few things, done some shorts, but this looks to be her first directing debut, and pretty solid outing.
Yeah,
seems
and
like.
wasn't involved in the first film, which is kind of the running theme of some of the folks in this. We'll get into that in a second, but I think they did bring back. I'm sure you're gonna get into the writers. They brought back one of the writers from the first Inside Out. What was her name?
Meg Lefauve.
Lefauve. So
Lefauve?
Meg is back, thank goodness. Because I was going to say, for it being a change in some of the folks involved in this, it does feel pretty seamless for a first-time director who wasn't involved in the first film. It doesn't feel like one of those straight-to-video sequels from the 90s, you know?
Yeah. That was a very different time in animated sequels, for sure.
When you could just exploit children of like, we're gonna make a sequel to this film your kids love, but none of the voice cast is back.
None of it's the same. Don't watch Beauty and the Beast 2, guys. It's not the same. It's not the same. Yeah, totally. And then Dave Holstein is another writer, helped with the screenplay, did some pretty different stuff than this. Like, was a TV writer for a lot of different things, including
Weeds.
some Weeds, yeah, 68 Whiskey, Kidding, a bunch of like a little bit heavier material. Definitely some other lighter material peppered in there, but I just thought that was funny to note that he writes very different things.
Yeah, I think the three of these folks I didn't see. Did you see The Good Dinosaur?
I did, and 8 out of 10 do not recommend.
Ooh.
I warn everyone I can that it is not as sweet and wholesome and gooey and beautiful as it purports to be in the trailer, and you will just leave that movie heartbroken, and I hate it. So
rather than The Good Dinosaur, what would you change the word good to in that title?
The Saddest Dinosaur.
The Saddest Dinosaur. Okay.
At
least now we have a more accurate view.
Very sad. I can't watch it ever again. Anyway.
But so I guess the three of these folks met there. That was the first thing they collaborated on, and then they were like, hey, we're making a sequel to Inside Out. You guys want on board? And the three of them trio came in and killed it here.
And the director was like, let's fucking lighten it up. Okay. Over The Good Dinosaur. Let's lighten it up. Yeah. So major cast and crew, speaking of people who have come back or not come back, let's get into that. So obviously Amy Poehler comes back as Joy, which is, again, like a core cast member, would totally be noticeable if she didn't. Also, we've talked about her at length on the pod, but quick refresher.
Wet Hot American Summer.
Wet Hot American Summer. She was in Sisters, Parks and Rec, a bunch of great stuff. Obviously, she's fucking hilarious.
Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo. Don't remember. I haven't seen that movie in 25 years. She's apparently in that. So
I know. I don't remember where she would be in that. But yeah, same thing. I haven't seen it in ages.
I guess maybe, Rob was off SNL by that point, but maybe because she was on SNL around then, they were like, that part.
They seem to like to cameo in each other's stuff. Right. So it could be very small for sure. So yeah, so we have that. We also have Kensington Tallman, who's playing Riley, who hasn't done a lot else besides these two, right? Like she's done a lot of other kiddo type of movies, like
mostly like TV series,
kiddo type of Disney series kind of movies. Like that seems to be her thing, which is
her last name. Her last name is Tallman. So I'm wondering, her great grandfather came over to Ellis Island, and they were like, "What's your last name?" And they were like, "Inspiakadopoulos." And they went, "You're pretty tall. Your new name is Tallman."
It's probably very much that kind of story. They were like, "How do we make this easier on us? This is about us, right?
We're Americans. This is what
Americans." We do. We also have Lisa Lapira, who is a replacement. So as you all may remember, Disgust was played by the one, the only Mindy Kaling, who was quite hilarious and I think did a great job on that, but did not get paid enough to come back. So she was replaced with this woman who's actually pretty funny. I've seen her in a couple other things. Crazy Stupid Love, she was a super funny character in. She was also in Fast and Furious, which feels very different. And then a lot of TV kind of stuff. But yeah, that was a controversial replacement along with Bill Hader, who also did not come back.
And I'm fine with the Tony Hale replacement because I love Tony Hale ever since he was
Yeah.
on Arrested Development and
Very
Veep.
funny.
He was also in this sort of obscure indie film maybe 5 or 6 years ago called Brave New Jersey. And
Oh,
it was fine. It wasn't mind
were
blowing,
you
but for an
like, New
indie film,
Jersey,
I was
New
like, fuck yeah, I
Jersey?
gotta go. I was fist pumping all 90 minutes. But in it, I think it takes place during the War of the Worlds broadcast, where this town in New
Oh.
Jersey thinks there is an alien invasion, and it's them reacting to the War of the Worlds. It was pretty clever. Like, it was a cool concept. It wasn't mind blowing, but it was worth seeing.
That's cute. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's good. I think he's funny. Like you said, Arrested Development, Veep. And another one that I have to point out that I think is super fun is that he was in Toy Story 4 as what I feel is a really critical character, Forky. If you remember that movie, very important character, integral to the film, and
I
very
only
funny.
remember, I don't think that film, I thought they should have ended Toy Story at 3, honestly, but the only memorable parts of 4 were Forky and then Keanu Reeves as the motorcycle guy. That's the only things I remember about Toy Story 4.
I am not a big like Toy Story fan. I had to come back to that bandwagon later, and I would still say it's not my favorite Pixar, but I did like Forky. I thought Forky was funny. I just loved the concept of you can make a toy out of anything and enjoy it. And anyway, he was also in Hocus Pocus 2 as the mayor, much to the chagrin of many people who didn't like that reboot.
Interesting.
But yeah, they didn't get, neither Bill Hader or Mindy Kaling got paid enough dinero, which I did the math on this actually. So they were each offered $100,000 to come back, and then a percentage of the royalties of the first $858.8 million of this film. They would get 0.01% if they had participated.
That's
in
at
this
least
film.
$20, at least.
At least $20.
They
But
could go see the movie and get a small soda.
it seemed like their complaint was more about like Amy Poehler, for example, got 5 million plus bonuses, right? They were going to be offered 100K plus bonuses. It's not clear what her bonuses were, so who knows? But what this would have paid them out, based on how well this film has performed, is $8.85 million.
Like I said, at least $20. So
At least
I was
$20.
correct. Yeah.
So I'm like, I think you guys like made the wrong move here, like made the wrong bet here. I don't know if they just thought the sequel wouldn't do well or what.
I would assume that it was probably the disparity between Poehler and the rest of the cast. I get Amy Poehler is, the main star of the first one, but
Yeah.
$5 million for her versus $100K for everyone else. That to me, like as a sports person, that was like you hear about Tom Brady when he was playing, taking less money in his contract so they could get better players on the team. And there's some players who are like, "Fuck you, pay me, give me the max contract," and that's kind of what I don't know Amy Poehler, but I
was
feel
gonna
like
say,
that
who knows? I attribute that to
awkward.
their agents and things. So, but I would feel awkward, but I don't know. I guess like I'm too cheap and I guess money motivated, because I would be like, that's a solid paycheck. Like I will take it. It's voice work. You know what I mean?
Just
like
for the
let's do
record,
it.
you're in for Inside Out 3. If the offer comes through, you're
The
down.
offer comes through.
You're not SAG certified yet, but we can get you there.
I can get there. Quick. Let's do it. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. Sorry, y'all. I just thought that was crazy. Louis Black is back as Anger. We've talked about him before as well. He's mostly known for his stand-up, but he's been in a couple of films, including Man of the Year, obviously Inside Out, the first one, and then a ton of other, I should say, TV appearances. I feel like he's a shtick on a lot of existing TV shows.
He has a distinct voice. Yeah, he's one of the we talk about distinct voices like H. John Benjamin in Wet Hot American Summer and Bob's Burgers and everything he does. I was shocked when I looked at Louis Black's filmography to see that he's been acting since the 80s, and it wasn't until the late aughts that he went, oh, you know what? My voice is pretty distinct. Let me start doing cartoons. Very strange.
But I think he's perfect. I mean, honestly, of all the cartoon work, like this is the best one. This is his personality, and I think it's hilarious. So it works out great. He was the perfect man for this. And then, of course, our last OG, Phyllis Smith, comes back as Sadness. She also, fun fact, came out of retirement to do this, which is hilarious. And she would not come to LA to do this. She refused to record outside of Missouri, which is where she lives, which I thought
she was getting too old for this shit, I guess.
Yeah. Too old to go to LA. She's like, I'm not here for this LA nonsense. Look,
And
woman after my own heart. I love
And
it.
for the record, we talked about, the two people who did get unfortunately replaced in this cast. I don't think it's super noticeable in those two cases. Like, yes, it's a different voice, but it still plays. I feel like Phyllis as Sadness, that would have been one you
That would have
noticed.
been a hard one. Yeah, that would have been a hard one to replace. I think she has also a very distinct voice. I agree.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's just kind of much like in The Office. Like it's just part of her personality, it just fits. So we also have some new characters that Lamar is going to take us through quickly so we don't super spoil it. But some of this is in the trailer, so calmate.
Yeah, so if you don't want zero spoilers about who the new emotions are, you can stop listening here and go watch the movie. It's very good and it's still in theaters apparently. But I wanted to call out that we have Maya Hawke as Anxiety, is probably the one that everyone recognizes,
Yeah.
daughter of Uma
Mr.
Thurman and
Ethan
Ethan
Hawke.
Hawke, and she's paid some dues. She's been acting since 2015 or so. You probably
Yeah.
all recognize her from Stranger Things, but she's done a lot of other stuff. I think she's also a musician too, right?
Yeah, and she did Asteroid City recently, a Wes
Okay,
Anderson,
okay.
and she did Maestro, and she also did Do Revenge, which I haven't seen, but looks really good actually. Looks
Yeah.
funny.
She's also in one of the Fear Street movies, which I think are underrated. They came out and didn't really get much play because they were sort of Netflix exclusives. But the Fear Street
Mm.
series, if you like schlocky horror slasher films, they're worth watching. But
Mm.
we have Ayo Edebiri as Envy, and you all know her from The Bear and the new TMNT Mutant Mayhem. She has another distinct voice, where as soon
Yeah.
as you hear it, you're like, oh, that's Ayo. She's awesome.
Mhm.
I know I'm going to butcher this name, so apologies in advance. I'll get the first name right. Adele, I assume. Her last name, Exarchopoulos. I really, Adele, if you're hearing this, if you're one of our listeners, sincere apologies if I messed that up. But she plays Ennui, who's one of my favorite of the newcomers. Not a ton
So
of
fun.
dialogue, but every piece of dialogue is super valuable.
Chef's kiss. It's great.
It's
Yes.
great. We have Paul Walter Hauser as Embarrassment. Talk about no dialogue. Very, very little lines
No
here, but
dialogue.
lots of nervous noises and ticks that he does. And then finally, we have June Squibb as Nostalgia, kills the scenes that she's in. I recognized her from Palm Springs, which we were just talking
Yeah.
about before recording. Probably my
Really
favorite
good
movie of
movie.
2020, because not a lot of movies came out in 2020, so it was kind of slim pickings, but worth
And weirdly
watching, absolutely.
feels kind of COVID-y as a movie. I'll just leave that there. But yeah,
Contained
in a
environment.
good in a good way,
Yeah.
in a meta kind of way. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. The last two things I wanted to call out as far as cast goes is the parents of Riley, who again don't get a ton of action here, but didn't know that was Diane Lane and Kyle MacLachlan.
Oh
So
yeah, that's them.
interesting choice there, and they obviously do well in the scenes they're in. And then
Diane
the last
Lane gives
one,
me strong mom vibes. Like I just in the best way. Like seems like she'd be such a sweet, wholesome mom. So I don't know.
Diane Lane, it gives me the opposite because she was in that movie Unfaithful with Richard Gere.
That's right.
That's my Diane Lane in my core memories. So
solid reference too. I do. That's a
Yes.
distinctly different Diane Lane for sure.
Yeah. And then the last one that I want to call out, we talked about Parks and Rec. We've talked about The Office. Let's talk about another NBC sitcom, and that's Community. And Yvette Nicole Brown. I didn't realize watching it, but she plays the hockey coach in this. And I love her so much. And I think she's underrated because on Community, they had her playing this character who appears 10 years older than Yvette is. And then after she got off the show, I was like, oh, she's, and not to say she's not attractive on the show, but they downplay how gorgeous this woman is. So kudos to her for
They
like
did her
getting where
dirty.
she's at now. Yeah. Yeah. They have
Fucked
her
up.
playing a mother of two, and like they age her up. It just seems very, so her fashion is very, suburban religious mother. And then you see her in real life and you're like, oh, wow. Okay. So good on her.
Sidebar, and we can cut this, but I just had this experience with a movie. I think it's Just Go With It. It was like a preview of it, and it's like one of those Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston ones. And they
And
tried
you were
to
like,
make
damn, that Adam Sandler. What a looker.
hard fucking no. Anyway, I was like, they tried to make Jennifer Aniston into a frumpy wife at the beginning. Like there's this whole makeup experience with her. Like she gets this big makeover and all of a sudden she's gorgeous. It's like, bitch, you can't make Jennifer Aniston not look gorgeous. Like, shut up. What is this storyline? Anyway.
I feel like movies that try to do that shit should just cast a different actress for the before part.
Right.
Just cast
Get
someone
who
else,
looks really
and then they get a
close, but
makeover and it's
not-
like, oh shit, it was Jennifer Aniston the whole time. Wow.
That would resonate better
Yeah.
for sure. So anyway, we did not blow through that, by the way. So I'm going to blow through this plot summary and our spoiler-free rating before we get going. So, quick plot summary if you haven't seen the trailer or you haven't seen it yet. A sequel that features Riley entering puberty and experiencing brand new, more complex emotions as a result. As Riley tries to adapt to her teenage years, her old emotions try to adapt to the possibility of being replaced. Dun dun dun. That's
Yeesh.
hardcore. Man, shit's about to go down. Which it really does. It really does. So before we get into what all went down, what's your spoiler-free rating?
Spoiler-free rating, I thought this was really enjoyable. Didn't love it as much as the first, but thought it ran with the concept. It kind of expanded, I guess I'll use the term lore here. It expands the lore of the universe. It does feel a bit like a rehash of, okay, we're doing this again, but I thought it did it justice. Like, I would recommend it to anybody who liked the first for sure. I'd give it, like an 8. I thought it was really enjoyable, not perfect by any means, and there's a couple, downsides to it. It does get a little slow at points, but absolutely worth watching and enjoyable.
Totally agree. +1 to all of that. I gave it a 7.5, but yeah, like I think it's it does a really good job, like I said at the top, of just making it all feel relatable and make sense. And I just continue to love that about this universe. I think there were some opportunity areas, and we'll get into those, but I do think on the whole it did really well. And it resonates with how strong it's going at the box office, which is at currently sitting at almost 1.6 billion with a B against a $200 million budget, which is, for context, guys, outperforming Deadpool, outperforming Twisters, outperforming everything else that's been at the box office, and most certainly, like you said earlier, highest performing animated film, period.
It's almost like if you market something, a product, a service to children, you're gonna make a lot of money. It's I don't understand the science of it, but why didn't Deadpool and Wolverine pull in this much money?
They need to get their shit together. That's why.
Just market Deadpool to 8-year-olds, please.
Because they're going to bug their parents until they go, right? Like, that's what it is. It's that the parents are just trying to shut the kids up. They're like, fine, we'll go.
And then they want to see it again and again and again. Yeah.
100%.
Coming from a guy who watched The Little Mermaid probably 16 times as a child because my sister wanted to watch it all the time. So
that was me. I think we've talked about this on the pod. That was me with The Little Mermaid. I was like, this is the most perfect film ever made. Why would we not watch it 100 times?
I know that they have the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards, but they should really consider letting kids vote for the Oscars one year. Just let children decide. Just mix it up a little bit. I would watch all 6 hours of that.
Yes, the nominations should come from kids, I think, is the distinctly different thing there, because the Oscars are quite dark on the whole, as you all have heard me talk about in the past. So yeah, let's let the kids take over one year. We can all experience some joy, like, it would be nice.
Well, Joy would be nominated, so very fitting that
Joy would obviously be nominated. Yes,
the kids 100%. Wouldn't even know who plays her. Just like, nominate Joy as Best Actress. Okay,
100%. Okay, so as we said, this is all about Riley hitting puberty. It's a couple years after the first one, and this is obviously a traumatic period, I think, in almost everyone's lives. Even if it's not the body stuff, it's all the other stuff, right? But the combo of the two is fucking terrible. So she, like, literally overnight, this happens to her. She's going into high school. We learn that she has this new element that has come to the center of this story almost, where we got the same core 4, like we said before, and they're all contributing to Riley's current sense of self along with her memories. And that sense of self is the core of Riley, right? What we learn about this is that Joy, bless her, love her, is still on her shit from before and is like, you know what? Negative memories? Fuck that. She's like, let's get him out of here. Just
there's no way this will come back to haunt us. Yeah.
She's just like, and what we love about Joy is that she has learned that sadness is critical to this equation and that it's okay to feel these emotions. So we are very proud of Joy's growth here, but I think this is still a little reminiscent.
It's bad strategy.
Yeah. Right. It's a bad strategy. This is reminiscent of Joy 1.0, who's still like, but you know what? We don't need that many bad memories, So she just shoots him to the back of the mind, which I think, again, so relatable. Like, who doesn't do that as a person? You're like, you know what? I just don't want to think about that. Let's just pretend like that never happened.
Dude, think about the things in your life where you did something really stupid or hurtful at the age of 14 and you still think about it to this day.
100%.
Mackenzie, 100%. You're what, 22? Like, this stuff.
Obviously.
Like, I'm going to be 40 next week and I still think about stupid shit that I said or did
100%.
from that time. And you have those memories back there. I think this film does a great job of, again, expanding on the concept of the first one of we're inside someone's brain, but the way that they represent all these different things is pretty spot on. You use the word relatable, and that's, yeah, 110%.
Yeah, I think it's again a very human experience of like I don't want to relive all the most terrible things that I've ever done in my life, but or I've been around for or I've embarrassed myself or whatever and all these things. So what we've come to find out is like the plot forward movement here is that she has her two best friends. They all play hockey like she did in the first one. They want to get on the Firehawks high school team, and we learn that she's the only one who's going to be at that high school though. So like this is a big deal for her because her two best friends are going to go to a different school. They're playing at this event, practice it seems, or something like that, maybe camp. They get invited to a skills camp to maybe get on the Firehawks early, which is exciting. But she finds out on the way to this that her best friends won't be going to this high school. This camp has so much pressure on it. Like you could potentially make the team coming out of this skills camp. It's a big deal to go to this camp. And of course, the puberty alarm gets hit the night before camp. And I just thought this was the funniest fucking scene.
Where they break everything down and like
everything.
rebuild the construction crew. Yeah, yeah.
I think it's such a cute scene where like they're all in their bunks, they're all asleep. Joy has the little stars, that Riley also has and had been imagining in the first film. And, they all are like their little bunks are reflective of their little personalities. And they all get woken up in the middle of the night by this horrific alarm and this construction crew of mind workers who come in and they just fucking wreck the original console. They're like, you know what? This is an upgrade. Meanwhile, it's like, practically duct taped together. There's all these new functions. And they leave it a mess, that was my favorite part, is that they leave this whole upper area console mind in disarray. The whole thing is that now that puberty has shown up, shit is wrecked, and so
and then they take like they have to they don't know how to operate Riley at this point. Our core set of characters, they're hitting the wrong buttons and stuff, and eventually Anxiety and the other new cast join to sort of show how this new operating system works. And I wanted to call out that, again, my middle school teaching experience of these new characters are, again, spot on. The kid with the hoodie, like, closed his tie. That is a person I've seen. I've seen 100%. Children do that.
We all saw that.
The anxiety-ridden kid who's like, I got a 99, I need 100. Like, otherwise I'm not perfect. I've seen those students. You got your hand up, Mackenzie. Yes.
Yep.
Even the envy, like all these ennui, just the kids that want to be on their phones.
God, the ennui of it all.
That is so spot on.
So fucking funny. So funny. It is just, like you said, they don't know how to operate it because this console is hypersensitive now. Like she flies off the handle whichever way anytime you lightly touch it. And I love the cutaway to her mom where she pops off at her mom, which like teenage daughters everywhere unite. We all did this. And her mom has this moment of like, well, there's a preview of the next 10 years. Like she's like, buckle in, it's about to go down.
I wanted to point out, I didn't know where to discuss this, but we had jokingly said, oh, make Deadpool and Wolverine for kids. Do you think that this movie in any way, not with the child audience, obviously, but with the adult audience, did you feel that this was impacted in any way by the fact that in the last 9 years since the first one came out, the TV show Big Mouth has debuted and sort of done something very similar to this? Because even the fight with the mom, I think that's episode 2 of Big Mouth. She hits puberty and immediately goes off on her mother, and her hormone monster is like, that's not mom anymore, that's Shannon. Like that, those kind of things. Do you think this movie is impacted for the adult audience, or does it not really matter, you think?
Well, one, that sounds relatable, but two, I have nothing to contribute having never seen Big Mouth.
Okay, well, Big Mouth is basically Inside Out 2 for R rating, so it's the opposite of the Deadpool Wolverine conversation we had.
Right, but to your point about adult, is this pivoted to adults at all? Yes, I absolutely think it is, because I think it's like, it's one of those things that you can know and appreciate better in retrospect. Right? Like I would be interested to talk more to teenagers or even younger kids, 8, 10, like my nephews and nieces, and ask them like like, was this funny? What did you like about it? You know, like kind of see like what resonated with them, because I think a lot of times it's just not going to hit the same way because we have all this perspective. We have all this context that they don't have. So I think it kills two birds with one stone. And that's why it can be so high performing at the box office. Cause I
Yeah.
mean, I went and saw it by myself, not with a kid, right? I'm like, this is still hilarious. This is still a great movie because it speaks to me.
Yeah, I wonder when you're talking about speaking to your nieces and nephews and whatnot, would they feel personally attacked by these things? Or would they be like, no, that's not me? Like, everyone remembers how
My
you were when you were
teenage
12. Like,
nephew, my teenage nephew would probably like be like, that's not me. You know, he's at that
mm-hmm,
age of like, I'm
I'm
too cool for
unique. I'm the only one who's like me.
I'm
Yeah.
different. But like you can see these things show up in them. And I hope he never hears this, but like
Hmm.
you can see where his anxieties are starting to show up. You can see where he's starting to feel embarrassed about things he wouldn't have before. And it's, I think maybe as an older, presence in a kid's life, it's one of the hardest things to see. Like I can't even imagine how it feels for parents. I love my nephews and niece more than anything on this planet. And it's so hard and a little bit heartbreaking to watch that invade. It really is.
Yeah.
And like these emotions start to come in and you just think that they're just perfection and they're joyous and they're beautiful and they're fun and creative and all these wonderful things about these kids because they are. And then, the world kind of gets to them and these things start to you know basically break through in a terrible way. And they make you into really good, well-rounded people over the long term. But I think in the short term, it's hard to watch them feel all these emotions at a really turbulent
And
time.
you are speaking from experiencing, you're empathizing of, I
Yeah.
went through that. I totally understand where you're coming, but it's when you're in that moment, nothing anyone on the outside tells you
You
is going to solve
cannot
that.
permeate the
Yeah.
membrane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just think of myself at that time too. And I was like, not that every single thing that my parents ever said was right, but you're like, I get this now. I get this thing now. I understand this
Hmm.
part now. And you want to just protect them from it and help them understand and see themselves better and feel more confident. I think that's the thing I wish I could impart to all of those kiddos and to every kid, but especially, my sister's kiddos of like, you get to be exactly who you are. And it's a gem. You're a gem. Okay. And you don't have to mold yourself around embarrassment or judgment or these other things. Like the things that you love are valid. The things about you that you're passionate about are valid. And like that's hard to get through because this whole movie is about self-doubt. It's about this self-doubt creeping in.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say all that. I wasn't even going to mention this. I'd seen a theory online that said in the first movie, obviously, at the end, we get to see the brains of other characters and which emotions are controlling them. And in
Yeah.
this, we get a little bit of that near the end, I believe, where we see the inside of Riley's parents' minds. And it's still the
Mhm.
same characters as the first one. I think anxiety might be present in both of their brains still, but
Mhm.
embarrassment, ennui, all those emotions aren't present in their brains. So some people
Yeah.
theorize that's the message of the film is, hey, these are puberty hormone teenage
Yeah.
emotions, and eventually when you become more comfortable with yourself, this stuff's going to go away. I don't know
Right.
if I agree 110%, but I think that might be what the movie's trying to say.
I think it's trying to say that these are four core are going to always be here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these other things, including other ones that we don't get a close look at, like you said, like nostalgia.
When did you start getting your nostalgia inside brain
I mean,
creature?
I think it comes in at the weirdest times actually, because even
Mm-hmm.
when you're like 15, you can be nostalgic for something that happened when you were 8, right? You can be when you were 30, you can be nostalgic for something that happened when you were 20, right? I think that's one of those emotions that comes and goes.
For me,
And
it wasn't until I saw or heard Paul Rudd in Knocked Up say, I wish I loved anything as much as my kids love bubbles. I think that was when nostalgia got thrown into my brain. And then you start reflecting on, oh, the good times we had in college and high school and blah, blah, blah. But that's
it's
my
so
theory.
true. It's one of the things that Amy Poehler said about this movie. She was like, coming back to do this work feels like such healing work. I feel like you get this connection to your younger self and you start to feel nostalgic for the time of simpler emotions of just sadness and fear, just
Mm-hmm.
joy and these things. And so I think it's something that, yeah, the overall film is telling you this is the most tumultuous time because all the fucking emotions are coming in and out and they're all poorly managed, right? They're just not able to balance themselves. And there are people who deal with that in the long term. Like, I wouldn't say I am an anxious person on the whole, but I definitely deal with anxiety. It comes and goes, right? And I
Mhm.
think most people would identify with that. You're like, oh my God, this is what this felt like. This is the moment I started to feel self-conscious. I used to be so brave and so confident, and these things came in and made me feel self-conscious.
Yeah, we're gonna say the word relatable probably 100 more times by the end of this podcast, but that feeling of anxiety of worrying about what every single person around you
Oh
thinks,
God,
that's
yeah.
something we all can relate to. And even my friend Bailey, who I got her all clear to share this, so thank you, Bailey. She encouraged me to
Hmm.
see this film in theaters. I was gonna wait for it to be streaming, but she said that depiction of panic attacks that takes place in this film is
Mm-hmm.
so accurate to what she experiences that that was the
Yeah.
most emotional point of the movie. Was holy shit, other people experience this, and this feeling that's going on inside of you of you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not talented enough, what if I fuck up? All these things are things that a lot of us can relate to. I'm lucky enough to have never experienced panic attacks, but that momentary just all that weighing on you's got to be
Mm-hmm.
rough.
And I can identify with Bailey. I've had a couple. I mean, again, I don't think I have anxiety disorder per se, but I've had a couple panic attacks. And that is, I agree, totally how they feel. And I think this segues nicely into like a core moment in the film that shifts for Riley, which is that her sense of self by anxiety, because of anxiety, gets launched away in
Hmm.
order to fit in, right? Her sense of self at the beginning is I'm a good person, and it gets launched into the ether back with those other memories so that she can fit in, because that is the most critical thing. Because anxiety is extrapolating out every possible ending to the story, right? And
Hmm.
that is absolutely what anxiety feels like. If I have to prepare for every
Overthinking.
single eventuality and I have to think every single one of them through, and obviously 98% of them are terrible, and I need to analyze the thing that is this direct threat, and this good person shit is not going to get me there. Toss it.
Hmm.
And that is that shift in Riley's brain that starts to make her compromise everything about herself. And I think everybody can identify with these moments, like you said, with the bullying. Like, I'm not a bully, that's not my personality, but I like tested the waters there, probably to see if I could connect to somebody and fit in with somebody,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
it's not the kind of person that you are. Nobody would say that about you, right? But everyone makes those compromises, I think, at this time in your life while you're trying to just figure it the fuck out.
Yeah, you're overthinking, and I definitely had times in my life where that was my MO, was just anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So let me think about everything, that every detail of tomorrow, to make sure that I'm completely prepared. And it's okay to
Prepared.
be prepared, in general when it comes to
Yeah.
work and things like that, or like, hey, what if this happens? Do we have it's you're not putting ourselves in danger, but you get so over prepared that yeah, it weighs on you. You're overthinking every single detail. But with that, I wanted to segue. Like, what did you think of the overall? Because obviously we saw this in theaters. We didn't have our notebooks. You can't. I have terrible penmanship in the dark, but I didn't take a lot of notes. But what did you think about the overall plot structure of what's happening inside her brain, of that journey to get
Yeah.
back to the main hub, as well as outside with the hockey team developments?
I thought they worked in parallel very well. And I think the high level, I think the point of this is that the internal brain journey is more important, right, to us, but it has real world external effects. It has an immediate impact on the things that Riley is actually doing
I
in the
liked
world.
I liked that about this one, was that we actually saw more of what was happening outside. Granted, it's been
Right.
6 years since I've seen Inside Out, but I feel like in this we actually see more of what Riley's experiencing, which was cool.
Yeah. And one of my favorite examples of that is the sarcasm. That is my
The
favorite
Sar
place
dash
on the
chasm. Yeah.
internal journey, is like they come to sarcasm and they're on one side of the chasm, and these workers are on the other side of the chasm, and they're trying to talk to them in a perfectly normal and calm, polite, cool way, and it just comes out as sarcasm. And I
Oh,
feel this, it was just the most relatable thing I could possibly connect to in this film, I think, because you feel like you're trying to have a normal conversation with someone, and it is just not connecting. There is a disconnect there. And my family will attest that, like, this was me. Everything I said that came out of my mouth was sarcastic. And you are genuinely not aware that you are being misinterpreted. You know what I mean? Like, you're playing with
yeah.
sarcasm at this point and you don't understand how it comes off. And I just thought it was the funniest scene of like them, like man, those people are jerks. Man, those people are jerks. Like you're not able to connect with anybody because of these disconnects, I think, in your brain, in your own brain. But there
Yeah.
was, they're going through her brain, obviously, to get to the sense of self, which they think they need to restore so that she will be better now, or back to normal Riley, which is what they keep saying. And they get locked in a vault. They break out of the vault, and there's this big, deep, dark secret in the vault that you don't
But
quite find out about
also
at
in the
first.
vault, though, is probably, we didn't mention during, because I guess this kind of would be a trailer because it's not in the trailer, so this would kind of be a spoiler, but Ron Funches as Bluefy the dog, I think he steals the show, honestly. Like, how kind of Bing Bong in the first one stole the show a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
Everyone thinks about Bing Bong. In this, Bluefy kills it. I think Bluefy's hilarious.
I think Bluefy is hilarious, and there's so many. It's funny that the things that are put in the vault, the things that she's ashamed of. If you just look
Yeah.
at how they coalesce and all the different characters, and that they have to break out, and how they break out is pretty funny on the whole. But they feel like they need to break out to go again get her sense of self. But while they're doing that, anxiety is establishing a new sense of self that
Mm-hmm.
is completely rooted in these negative memories, these negative experiences, these fears, these aspects of self-doubt. And what's interesting to me about anxiety, and this is what I love, and actually this is like the therapy in me talking, is anxiety thinks she's helping you. Anxiety thinks she's protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's important to understand here. She is in service of Riley. She is trying to protect Riley. She thinks she's doing what's best for her. And it takes the course of this film for her to realize that she kind of fucked it up, you know?
And but I think they do a good job, at least when they bring it full circle at the end, to say, hey, a little anxiety, and we just talked about preparedness, like a little anxiety is a good thing.
Is
This is a
normal, yeah.
necessary emotion that you need to have. It's when you let it run your life
Take
that it
over,
becomes a
yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Totally. And I think it culminates in her freak out at the console,
Mm-hmm.
where, and again, to the internal and external point that you made of like her internal, you see it happening at the console in such a really visually stunning way that again
Yeah.
makes so much sense, and she's just a little fucking tornado at that console, pressing every button, trying to fix
It's a
everything.
great
Like
segue into Twisters next week.
100%. We have a tornado here, we have a tornado there, 100%. And then you see it manifest. She fucks up in the game. She
Mm-hmm.
then she sits down and she realizes how bad it was, and she just goes into a full-blown panic attack. But that's the thing that makes her realize, and I think it's an important step for her, makes her realize that she can't control Riley's sense of self. She can't do the right thing for Riley on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And Joy comes back at the same time. They make it back with her sense of self. She puts it back. But anxiety realizing that she can't control Riley is what helps Joy realize that she also can't control Riley.
And the
And that
entire bad memories in the back of the brain
yeah,
thing was a terrible decision. Yeah.
was a terrible decision. And now it's permeated her mind anyway. So like
Mm-hmm.
it was just a, Band-Aid over a bullet hole, right? And so she lets it go, removes both senses of self, and lets a new one form. And I think that's such a great visual metaphor for puberty and how you come through it a different person, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the one thing that kind of bothered me about that, the aftermath of the panic attack and her Riley's realization of what's going on in the situation and kind of the mistakes she's made, I liked the moral there. I don't love that she still makes the team. I feel like they could have played out the ending a
I
little
don't think it's
differently.
I
She doesn't
don't
apologize to the coach. She just goes out and passes a couple times. The coach is like, "Okay, you're on the team." Like, it just felt a little unearned.
I feel like, so I read this later because I couldn't remember that scene, because again, we saw it in theaters one time and it's been a
Mm-hmm.
month. And I was like, does she make the team? She just sees a piece of paper and her face lights up.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that she made it.
Do you think the
And
paper says you didn't make the team and she's
no, I don't know that she's super happy. I think like, so I have a girlfriend, her daughter had a very similar situation with volleyball, for example. And she was obsessed with volleyball. She worked her ass off. She didn't make the team. Right.
Yeah.
And instead of being super fucking devastated about it, she was like, well, that's okay. I'm just going to hustle harder,
Yeah.
and I'm going to make it the next time. And she fucking did. And I think Riley has either way, this news is going to be okay because she's either going to work really hard for it and figure it out, or she made the team and she's relieved and she was happy. I think it would be really unlikely after her behavior in that game that she would be seen as mature enough to make the
Yeah,
team.
like she
That's the
hit
part.
her own teammate. And I meant to
Right.
call this out earlier as a former hockey player. I love that hockey is such a focal point of this, and it was in the first one too. But
Yeah.
I really liked that component. But she literally checks her own teammate to steal the puck in order to
Yeah.
score.
I would
So
I would maybe need to rewatch that exact scene just to be certain. Like I said, I
yeah.
researched this again, but it seems unlikely to me that she would have made it. Like, I don't think that coach would have changed their mind off that notebook note that they already had that she wasn't ready when the next day she comes in and she checks her teammate and she then has a panic
Yeah.
attack. I don't think she then makes the team for that reason.
Right. And
I
they
think,
could have you said this was a $200 million budget. They could have
yeah,
splurged another 300K to add a scene of her playing on the freshman team while the
yeah,
coach of the senior team or the varsity team is in the stands giving her a thumbs up. That
right,
would have explained it away of like, hey, this doesn't make everything right just because she had
right,
this grand realization. She did some messed up stuff and she's
right,
going to have to earn it back. I think they could have just
right.
told that a little better.
Yeah, and I think that's fair because I think it's easy to interpret that she made it, but I don't think
Mm,
that's realistic. It's
yeah.
probably that she made a team, but not that team, right? Like a
Yeah.
JV versus varsity, right? Like I doubt that she made the team after that behavior. But I don't, that was one of my notes too of this learning experience for Riley is so truncated and
Yeah.
it implies that she's like all better now. And, puberty does not move that quickly and your emotions don't resolve themselves that quickly. And so it feeling a little bit like all happy ending even though I know that's not
Yeah.
exactly what they were trying to do, that was where to me it kind of lost me a little bit where I was like, I don't feel like she would just be, she's everything has come to a resolution.
I think that's a fair take for sure. It's a momentary moment of happiness. And hey, I've kind of got things not completely sorted out, but I feel comfortable right now. That's not to say that things aren't going to get rough again at some point, you know?
Yeah.
I think emotions are a wave that you ride. And even as somebody who's gone through depression, you come
Mhm.
out of that and you feel really good about surviving and
Right.
being good about it. That doesn't mean that I don't occasionally get sad again, but you
Yeah.
have that moment. And maybe it's just we see her in this moment of the happy ending, knowing that it's still going to be complicated from there on.
Oh, for sure. But I agree with you. I think they could have thrown in like a little scene to give some context to that to make it feel a little bit more realistic. Of like
Yeah.
it's not a perfect ending, but it's progress.
Yeah.
She's making progress.
Facts.
Awesome. Well, I think overall, like we said, this was 7.5 out of 10 for me. I think 8 for you.
Did you stay after the credits?
I think I did.
Did you see the reveal of the deep dark secret?
Yes. Yes, I did. Yeah.
I
She burned
we
a
burn
hole in the rug.
rug. I mean, it's funny.
I wanted it to be a little bigger. I'm not saying she should have committed a murder, but I did want it to be like a little bit better of a reveal. Yeah.
I thought they were going full sociopath. Like, remember that time we crushed a frog with a hammer just to see what
Oh my
taking life
God.
felt like? And it's like, holy shit, this guy. And then I remembered it was a kid's movie. This is not
Right.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
It's actually
Yeah.
not for you, Lamar. I'm sorry to tell you. But yeah, I agree. I feel like it could have been a little bit more interesting reveal. I don't know. Maybe like she kissed a boy. You know what I mean? Like that would be more in line with her age and also feel like a secret or,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was weird. But like we said, guys, worth a watch. Very funny. Holds up to the first one very well. Like we said, I think it's still a very good film.
It does it justice, and I think the best part of this is again the expansion on the concept, because I think the first one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
If here's 4 emotions you feel, here's what's going on in your head when they happen. This one,
Yeah.
with the addition of things like the sarcasm and the self-belief and all these it's just as you grow up, these emotions get more complex. I dug that.
Yeah. They appear. Oh, and I forgot. I wore orange for anxiety.
I guess I wore red for anger. I didn't get the memo.
That checks out. That checks
Yeah.
out. Oh, all right. Well, thanks for joining, fam. As we alluded to earlier, come back next week for our final blockbuster of 2024's summer, Twisters.
Which
I'm
yeah,
excited
if
about.
you're one of those people who says I only tune in for the episodes that I've seen the movie, go see this movie while it's in theaters. I had
Yeah.
my doubts. If I had seen it on a small screen streaming, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much, but it is a fucking spectacle.
It is a spectacle. Exactly. That's the best way to say it. Even if you are not a Twisters fan, like it's an action movie. It's like best viewed in a theater. So yes, absolutely go see it. So in the meantime though,
Yeah, follow us on our socials. We drink and we watch things. Pretty active on Instagram and now active on TikTok. So give us a follow, like, comment. I think we actually did ask for some feedback last week when we covered Deadpool and Wolverine of favorite X-Men in the comments. So
yeah.
give us some engagement there. We're trying to grow our audience. That definitely helps us out. Feel free to email us at wedrinkandwewatchthingspod if you're old school. And here is a super early teaser because we are about 2 months away from our 1 year anniversary, Mackenzie.
Can you believe it?
I can
I'm so
believe it. It's a
excited.
lot of work doing a podcast.
Yeah, actually, we can believe it. You're right. You're right. We can believe that this has been a fucking year of this. Yeah.
So tune into our socials because we're going to be asking for some audience feedback, engagement, maybe some call-ins of some type. It's a little teaser there for you. So make sure you're following us in preparation for the 1 year episode.
Yeah, 100%. Good call. All right. Well, for now, go have a drink and watch a thing. Cheers.
Cheers.
Clink, clink. I feel like my clink, clink effect is pretty strong.
It's pretty solid. It's very
pretty
solid.
solid.
Yes.